In a stunning display of international solidarity, thousands of protesters have taken to the streets of central London today, marching in fervent support of Burkina Faso's interim president Ibrahim Traoré. Eyewitnesses report crowds swelling to an estimated 5,000 participants, waving Burkinabe flags, holding banners emblazoned with Traoré's image, and chanting rhythmic songs of praise as they weave through iconic landmarks like Trafalgar Square and Parliament Square. The atmosphere is electric, with demonstrators from diverse backgrounds, including African diaspora communities, human rights activists, and anti-imperialist groups, uniting under the banner of Traoré, Africa's Hope for Sovereignty. The protest, organized by the newly formed Global Alliance for African Self-Determination, began at noon outside the Burkina Faso embassy and has since morphed into a mobile rally snaking through the city's thoroughfares. Chants echoing through the air include adaptations of traditional Burkinabe folk songs, with lyrics like Traoré, our captain, leading us to freedom, and From Ouagadougou to London, we stand with you, set to upbeat rhythms amplified by portable speakers and drums. Police presence remains light, with no reports of disruption so far, though traffic has ground to a halt in several areas as marchers occupy lanes, drawing curious onlookers and impromptu joiners. This outpouring of support comes amid Traoré's ongoing efforts to stabilize Burkina Faso following his 2022 coup, which ousted the previous military junta. Protesters are vocal about their admiration for Traoré's policies, including his crackdown on corruption, expulsion of foreign mining interests accused of exploitation, and push for Pan-African alliances. One demonstrator, a Burkinabe expatriate named Aisha Koulibaly, told reporters on the scene, "Traoré is fighting for our dignity back home." This march shows the world that Africans abroad won't let neo-colonial powers undermine him. Delving deeper into the implications, this London protest could mark a pivotal moment for Traoré's leadership, amplifying his global profile at a time when Burkina Faso faces internal challenges like jihadist insurgencies and economic pressures. On the diplomatic front, the visibility of such a large-scale demonstration in a major Western capital might pressure international bodies like the UN and EU to reconsider their stances. Traoré, often criticized by Western media for his alliances with Russia and rejection of French influence, could leverage this show of grassroots backing to negotiate better terms in foreign aid and security partnerships. Analysts suggest it signals a shift in narrative, portraying him not as a coup leader but as a populist hero resonating with the African diaspora, potentially encouraging similar rallies in cities like Paris, New York, and Berlin. Economically, the protest's positive ripple effects on Traoré's reign could be substantial. By highlighting his reforms, such as nationalizing key resources and investing in local agriculture, the event draws attention to Burkina Faso's untapped potential, possibly attracting ethical investors aligned with his vision of self-reliance. This could bolster foreign direct investment from non-Western sources, reducing dependency on traditional lenders like the IMF, whose conditions Traoré has publicly decried. Domestically, images of London crowds chanting his name are already circulating on social media in Burkina Faso, likely boosting morale among his supporters and consolidating his base ahead of any future elections or transitions. Furthermore, the cultural impact shouldn't be understated. The chants and songs performed today blend Burkinabe traditions with global protest anthems, fostering a sense of cultural pride that extends beyond borders. This could inspire youth movements in Burkina Faso, where Traoré's emphasis on education and anti-corruption resonates with a demographic eager for change. In terms of security, the international endorsement might deter external threats, as adversaries could perceive Traoré's regime as having broader, more vocal support networks abroad, making interference riskier. As the march continues into the evening, with plans for speeches at Hyde Park, the energy shows no signs of waning. Organizers hint at this being the start of a coordinated global campaign, with petitions circulating to urge the UK government to recognize Traoré's contributions to regional stability. The fervor in London today underscores a loyalty to Traoré that dates back to his dramatic ascent to power in September 2022, when he led a coup against the previous junta leader. From day one, Burkinabe citizens and the global African diaspora have rallied behind him, viewing the then 34-year-old captain as a fresh, unyielding force against entrenched corruption and foreign domination. Social media erupted with hashtags like #CaptainTraoré and #BurkinaRises almost immediately after the takeover, with expatriates in Europe and the US organizing virtual fundraisers and awareness campaigns to amplify his message of sovereignty. This early groundswell of support wasn't just symbolic, It translated into tangible boosts for his regime, as diaspora remittances surged by reported double digits in the following months, providing economic ballast during the turbulent transition period. What truly cements this enduring backing, protesters here argue, is Traoré's track record of accomplishing feats that once seemed politically and economically impossible in a nation long plagued by instability and external influence. Chief among these is his bold nationalization of key gold mines, a move that has redefined Burkina Faso's resource management and struck at the heart of neo-colonial exploitation. In a series of decisive actions, Traoré's government revoked permits from foreign firms, including a high-profile deal to acquire and nationalize the Bungu and Wagnian mines from a UK-based company for around $80 million, effectively bringing these lucrative assets under state control. This wasn't mere rhetoric. It followed earlier nationalizations, such as the Bungu mine from Lilia Mining and others, totaling at least 5 major sites now redirected to benefit the national treasury rather than overseas shareholders. The positive impacts ripple far. Revenues from these mines are being funneled into building the country's first gold refinery, ending the era of exporting raw ore and instead processing it domestically to capture higher value-added profits. Economists project this could increase Burkina Faso's GDP contribution from mining by up to 20% in the coming years, funding infrastructure like roads and schools while reducing reliance on volatile international commodity prices. Moreover, it empowers local communities by creating jobs in refining and oversight, with Traoré's administration prioritizing Burkinabe workers and even deploying ministers to secure advanced equipment, such as massive bucket wheel excavators from China, to modernize operations. This shift not only bolsters fiscal independence but also inspires regional neighbors, as seen in the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, where Traoré's model of resource reclamation is influencing policies in Mali and Niger, potentially fostering a bloc of economically resilient nations resistant to Western financial strings. Equally transformative has been Traoré's severance of long-standing security ties with France, a rupture that many in the crowd today hail as a masterstroke of decolonization. Shortly after taking power, he expelled French troops, dismantled the Operation Sabre counterterrorism mission, and terminated military cooperation agreements that had allowed Paris undue influence over Burkina Faso's affairs for decades. This bold pivot, once deemed suicidal given France's historical grip on Francophone Africa, has instead opened doors to new partnerships, notably with Russia for military training and equipment, enhancing the Burkinabe army's capabilities against jihadist threats in the Sahel. The impacts are multifaceted. Domestically, it has galvanized national pride, with recruitment into volunteer defense forces skyrocketing as citizens feel empowered to protect their own sovereignty rather than relying on foreign forces often accused of prioritizing their own interests. On the security front, Traoré reorganized the defense apparatus, committing to territorial integrity and launching offensives that have reclaimed swaths of land from insurgents, reducing attack frequencies in key areas and allowing displaced families to return home. Internationally, this move has positioned Burkina Faso as a beacon for anti-imperialist movements, drawing admiration from across Africa and beyond, which in turn strengthens Traoré's negotiating power in forums like the African Union. Beyond these headline reforms, Traoré's regime has tackled an array of impossible challenges with audacious zeal. He's forged secret mining pacts that promise billions in investments, potentially uncovering vast untapped resources that could eclipse traditional exports and challenge global dollar dominance in regional trade. Initiatives like transforming mining waste into wealth through innovative recycling and refining techniques are turning environmental liabilities into economic assets, promoting sustainable development while addressing climate vulnerabilities in the arid Sahel. Socially, his anti-corruption drives have led to high-profile arrests and asset seizures, restoring public trust in government institutions that were previously seen as irredeemably tainted. Education and youth empowerment programs, inspired by his own military background, are equipping the next generation with skills in agriculture and technology, aiming to curb urban migration and foster rural revitalization. These efforts, combined with his charismatic no-nonsense style, often compared to revolutionary icons like Thomas Sankara, have sustained his popularity, with polls, albeit limited, showing approval ratings hovering above 70% among urban youth. The London marchers, many of whom have followed his journey since those first days, see these accomplishments as proof of his vision, chanting not just for support but in celebration of a leader who has turned Burkina Faso from a footnote in global affairs into a symbol of resurgence. As dusk falls over the capital, with speakers now taking the stage in Hyde Park to recount personal stories of how Traoré's policies have touched lives back home, The protest evolves into a cultural festival of sorts, complete with traditional dances and shared meals. Amid the vibrant scenes in Hyde Park, where protesters share stories under the glow of streetlights, the sentiment is clear. Ibrahim Traoré is acutely aware that the people, both at home and abroad, are firmly behind him. Diaspora leaders speaking from the makeshift stage recount how Traoré has publicly acknowledged this unwavering support in recent addresses, often referencing the flood of encouraging messages on social media and the influx of volunteer recruits for national defense initiatives as evidence that his vision resonates deeply. This awareness isn't passive. It's fueling his resolve, with insiders noting that real-time feedback from events like today's London March is monitored by his administration through dedicated channels, allowing him to gauge public sentiment and adjust policies accordingly. Protesters here emphasize that this global backing empowers Traoré to push boundaries further, knowing that attempts by detractors to isolate Burkina Faso diplomatically will falter against such visible international solidarity. Central to this dynamic is Traoré's steadfast commitment to fulfilling the vows he made upon assuming power. Promises rooted in restoring dignity, security, and prosperity to the Burkinabe people. From his inaugural speeches, he vowed to prioritize the masses over elite interests, declaring that his government came for the people and will be by the people, a mantra echoed in the chants rippling through the London crowd today. This isn't empty rhetoric. Traoré has operationalized it through a series of people-centric reforms that directly address long-standing grievances. For instance, in agriculture, a lifeline for over 80% of Burkina Faso's population, he's distributed hundreds of tractors, motor pumps, and motorcycles to smallholder farmers, transforming subsistence plots into productive enterprises and boosting food security in regions battered by conflict and climate change. Protesters, many with rural roots, hail this as a direct fulfillment of his pledge to end hunger and dependency, with early data showing increased crop yields that could reduce import bills by millions, freeing up funds for social programs. This hands-on approach extends to community engagement, where Traoré regularly tours villages to listen to citizens' concerns, incorporating their input into policy, such as expanding irrigation projects based on local feedback, ensuring governance feels inclusive rather than top-down. Delving deeper, Traoré's insistence on a government by the people manifests in his anti-exploitation stance, where he systematically dismantled systems that once siphoned wealth away from ordinary Burkinabe. Unlike predecessors accused of colluding with foreign entities for personal gain, Traoré's regime has audited and reformed extractive industries, ensuring revenues from nationalized mines flow back into public coffers for infrastructure like schools, hospitals, and roads. This has not only curbed corruption through high-profile trials and asset recoveries, but also created thousands of jobs for locals in mining and related sectors, lifting families out of poverty and fostering a sense of ownership over national resources. The positive impacts on his reign are profound. By fulfilling these vows, Traoré has cultivated a loyal base that views him as a guardian against suffering, with approval ratings soaring among youth and rural demographics who benefit most from initiatives like free healthcare expansions and youth training programs. In security matters, his vow to restore territorial integrity has seen the reorganization of defense forces, incorporating civilian volunteers into anti-terrorism efforts, which has reclaimed villages from insurgents and allowed displaced families to return without fear of exploitation by opportunistic groups. This people-powered model contrasts sharply with past regimes, where foreign-led operations often exacerbated local hardships. Now, communities report feeling empowered, with reduced civilian casualties and improved access to aid, bolstering Traoré's legitimacy and deterring internal challenges. Tying back to the protest, marchers are live-streaming these discussions, hoping to reach Traoré directly and reinforce that his people-first ethos is what sustains their enthusiasm. One speaker, a London-based activist, shares how Traoré's rejection of exploitative aid conditions, opting instead for equitable partnerships, has prevented the kind of debt traps that once burdened families, allowing for investments in education that promise long-term upliftment. As the night deepens, with drum circles forming and more arrivals swelling the ranks, the event takes on an even more reflective tone, with participants debating how this diaspora energy can translate into sustained support for Traoré's ongoing reforms. In a dramatic turn that has electrified the gathering in Hyde Park, protesters erupted in cheers as a pre-recorded video message from Ibrahim Traoré himself was projected onto a large screen, directly addressing his supporters in London and beyond. Speaking from Ouagadougou with his characteristic intensity, the 37-year-old leader, clad in his signature military fatigues, emphasized that the fight for self-actualization is inherently a collective endeavor, one that transcends borders and demands unity from every African and ally. This struggle is not mine alone, it is ours, woven into the fabric of our shared history and future, Traoré declared, drawing on themes from his recent speeches where he has repeatedly framed Burkina Faso's reforms as a blueprint for continental liberation. Delving into this, Traoré's vision of collective self-actualization echoes the Pan-Africanist ideals of predecessors like Thomas Sankara, whom he often invokes, positioning it as a rejection of individualistic Western models that prioritize profit over community. By nationalizing resources and fostering alliances like the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, with Mali and Niger, he argues this collective fight dismantles neo-colonial divides, enabling pooled military and economic strength to combat jihadist threats and external exploitation. The positive impacts on his reign are evident. This rhetoric has mobilized volunteer defense forces numbering in the tens of thousands, turning ordinary citizens into active participants in national security, reducing reliance on foreign troops and fostering a sense of communal ownership that has stabilized volatile regions. Economically, it promotes shared prosperity through initiatives like cooperative farming and mining collectives, where profits are redistributed to fund education and healthcare, potentially lifting millions out of poverty and inspiring similar movements across West Africa, as seen in growing support for AES expansion. Traoré expressed profound happiness that the people are finally seeing what his government has long perceived: the stark realities of systemic inequities perpetuated by external powers. I am overjoyed that your eyes are open to the truths we confront daily, the manipulations that have kept Africa fragmented, he stated, a sentiment that resonates with his ongoing critiques of how Western influences have historically undermined African agency. This shared vision, he elaborated, stems from policies like ending French security pacts and exposing corrupt deals, which have revealed layers of exploitation once hidden from public view. Protesters in London nodded vigorously as he spoke, many sharing personal anecdotes of how diaspora communities have awakened to these issues through social media campaigns highlighting Traoré's reforms. The deeper implications bolster his leadership by aligning public perception with governmental actions, eroding skepticism and building trust. For instance, transparency drives in auditing foreign contracts have recovered millions in misappropriated funds, directly benefiting infrastructure projects that voters can see and feel, thereby cementing loyalty and deterring opposition narratives. On a broader scale, this awakening fosters Pan-African solidarity, as evidenced by joint AES declarations on resource sovereignty, which could reshape regional trade dynamics and reduce dependency on global financial institutions accused of imposing austerity measures that exacerbate suffering. Underscoring the undeniable power of truth, Traoré asserted that no amount of distortion can suppress it forever, a pointed jab at narratives that paint his regime as unstable or authoritarian. The power of truth is like the Sahel sun, it burns away the shadows of lies, he proclaimed, invoking imagery from his addresses where he has accused international actors of fabricating crises to justify intervention. Delving deeper, this emphasis on truth has been a cornerstone of his communication strategy, with his administration launching fact-checking initiatives and media literacy programs to counter disinformation, particularly around security gains where reclaimed territories are now verifiable through satellite imagery and community reports. The impacts ripple positively. By empowering citizens with accurate information, it has reduced panic-driven migrations, stabilized local economies, and enhanced recruitment for defense, as people trust the government's claims of progress against insurgents. Internationally, this truth-telling elevates Traoré's stature among anti-imperialist circles, attracting partnerships from nations like Russia and China that align with his narrative, providing military aid without the strings of conditional loans, thus accelerating Burkina Faso's path to self-reliance. Declaring it revolution time, Traoré rallied the crowd with a call for urgency, framing the current moment as a pivotal juncture for Africa's rebirth. The hour of revolution has struck. We must seize it with unyielding resolve, he urged, building on his speeches that portray Burkina Faso's changes as a catalyst for continent-wide upheaval. This revolutionary zeal manifests in bold moves like constructing domestic refineries and forging non-Western alliances, once deemed unattainable, now yielding tangible results such as increased gold revenues funding arms production and agricultural mechanization. The deeper effects strengthen his reign by galvanizing youth, who form the bulk of protesters here and volunteers back home, channeling their energy into productive reforms rather than unrest, potentially averting the coups that plagued previous administrations. Regionally, it inspires emulation, with Niger and Mali adopting similar stances, forming a revolutionary bloc that challenges ECOWAS sanctions and promotes alternative economic models free from neo-colonial oversight. Insisting that all hands must be on deck to achieve this great quest for the people of Africa at large, Traoré called for active participation from every sector: diaspora remittances, intellectual contributions, and grassroots activism, to build a unified, sovereign continent. No one can sit idle. This quest demands every voice, every effort, for Africa's true emancipation, he emphasized, a theme recurrent in his youth empowerment talks where he encourages innovation and vigilance. Delving into this, his government has implemented programs like national service mandates and diaspora investment incentives, drawing skills and capital back to Burkina Faso, which has spurred tech startups in agriculture and mining tech, creating jobs and reducing brain drain. The broader quest impacts his leadership by expanding support networks. For example, AES collaborations share intelligence and resources, enhancing counterterrorism efficacy and positioning Traoré as a Pan-African architect, whose influence now extends to forums like the African Union, where his ideas on collective defense gain traction. 0 CA3DB. This inclusivity also mitigates internal divisions, as diverse ethnic groups unite under the banner of shared progress, fostering social cohesion amid ongoing challenges. Finally, Traoré implored his supporters to keep backing him unwaveringly and to disregard Western media portrayals, which he labeled as tools of division. Stand firm with me, and turn a deaf ear to the distortions of Western media. They fear our unity because it spells the end of their dominance, he warned, echoing his fiery open letters and videos that directly challenge outlets like CNN and BBC for biased coverage. This admonition delves into a core grievance. Media narratives often amplify human rights concerns or instability while ignoring achievements like reduced jihadist attacks and economic gains, which Traoré counters by promoting alternative African media platforms. The impacts are empowering. By heeding this, supporters amplify authentic stories via social media, countering sanctions and isolation attempts, as seen in the surge of pro-Traoré content that has influenced global opinion and attracted ethical investments. Domestically, it builds resilience against propaganda, with public awareness campaigns exposing lies about debt and resources, ensuring sustained popular mandate for his reforms. As the video concluded to thunderous applause, the London protest wrapped up peacefully around midnight, with organizers vowing more actions ahead. This event not only highlights Traoré's growing international clout, but also underscores the burgeoning wave of African self-determination echoing across the globe. Reporting from Daily Topics Studio, this is Valentine for Daily Topics.